walk here.
Oh, bro, I brought 2 pairs of gloves. I brought strength because I'm pretty sure I'm going to need them. All right. I'm being told we're live.
Okay.
We're streaming.
Oh, sweet. We're streaming?
Oh, yeah. This is
Are we on
worldwide,
Twitch?
real time. Well, that's even better. YouTube. Some
nice.
people have heard of it.
Yeah, indeed.
Welcome. Thanks for looking back in. Pure Gravel coverage presented by FSA. We're here at Iron Monk Brewery. Just the kickoff to Mid-South weekend. Payson McElveen, thanks for joining us, brother.
Yeah.
What's going on? How you feeling?
Boy, I can't even believe I'm here right now because we just pulled in about 20 minutes ago and had a bit of a whirlwind of a travel day, but made it 4 hours later than expected.
Got a nice cold Mid-South IPA to chew on a little bit here.
This new just released IPA, as we were sitting in traffic for an hour between here and OKC, I was just dreaming about this because I knew I wasn't going to get to ride. So this is obviously the next best thing. I did not expect to be doing an interview right now, but
that's all right.
I mean, we're here, we have the beer, and this is great.
Sitting in the back room of a brewery.
It feels very efficient. Yeah. So
I was gonna say 2-time defending champion, but you're not defending anything. You won those things outright. You're the 2-time returning champion.
Yeah.
In 2 different types of conditions, which is something that Oklahoma can present.
Yeah, very true.
Talk about the differences in both of those wins.
Boy. Yeah, Mid-South seems to deliver excitement every year, environmentally, climactically. When I came here in 2019, it was sort of my first real gravel race, you could say.
Yeah.
And I wasn't completely familiar or sold on gravel racing at that point. But once I got here, and in large part thanks to Bobby's enthusiasm and just the entire event environment, I really, got stoked pretty quickly. And then the race was really fun too. I mean, it was dry mostly, really fast. The start was super cold, not quite as cold as it's going to be this year, but pretty cold. And Ted, Drew Dillman, and I had a great battle that was a lot of fun. Came down to a tight 3-way sprint. Obviously, the following year was very different. Epic proportions,
right?
Epic conditions, and I think year 1 finishing time was like 5 hours. Year 2 it was well over 6.
For the same roughly 100
exact same
or 4 miles.
Exact same course.
Yeah.
A lot of running, a lot of back and forth, a lot of lead changes. One of those days I'll never forget because it was very unique conditions, and also I just remember being totally committed the whole day, and I had some bad luck early on where I got a stick stuck in my spokes and lost a whole bunch of time and had to go on an hour-long chase to get back to the lead group. My day was over, and then had this back and forth with Pete. He had his mechanical issue. It was just carnage from start to finish. And to come out winning that felt miraculous in a lot of ways. Right. And like if we'd run that race in those conditions 10 times, there would have been 6 different winners.
Right.
So that almost made it more special, that because it's so unusual in a bike race for everything to come together. There's so many things that have to happen for you to win.
Is that just the racer mentality though, to know that you're down by Bobby, that you're down by that length, or maybe what you don't even know is the distance, but to still stay in it, to think, I had a mechanical and I'm chasing back, so he could have a mechanical too. Does that just speak to the racer mentality to stick in there and keep pedaling away? Yeah, and I think it's something you have to learn. It's something I've developed over the years. But I will say, going into 2020, I did put a lot of pressure on myself, just because I had won the previous year. And so when I had that mishap early on, it was literally like mile 20. I got a time check that we were a minute and a half down, and it was Strickland and Colin and Danny Summerhill, and I was just like, oh my God, like this is worst case scenario. Hard not to maybe stop and have a whiskey at the next station.
And just as luck would have it, I rejoined, or one of the groups I caught had my teammate at the time, Dennis Van Winden, in the group, who was a World Tour pro for many years on Rabobank and all that sort of thing. And it's funny because there was very little teamwork to be done that day in a traditional sense. Like, there was very little drafting. I mean, the average speed was so low. Right. The mud was so thick. You were just swerving all over the place. So we couldn't really take turns pulling. But what he did do is I started to panic chase. And he said, he asked me in the race, what do you want from today? Like, do you want to get back into the race and have a good result? Or are you just trying to empty the tank, like emotional ride, do everything you can? And I said, if we can ride back into the race, I'd love to try to still get a good result. And he said, okay, then relax. And we're going to close this gap down over the course of an hour, not 20 minutes. And so we took, 10 seconds out very gradually. And if I'd been on my own and panic chased, which I was doing, and hadn't had him there to simmer me down,
right.
I don't think I necessarily would have even had a great result that day. So I was very fortunate in that regard to have him there as sort of a voice of reason, sort of a veteran.
Okay.
And then once we got back to the lead group, we caught them kind of right at the halfway point, at about mile 50, right at the aid station. And it felt like it felt like the race restarted.
Yeah.
Like I knew we were exhausted because we'd just done a massive effort to get back. But the fact that we got back to the lead group felt so miraculous. I was like, this is a win. Anything that happens after this is gravy.
Right.
And then because it's gravel racing and because the conditions were so insane, all kinds of wild things happened and people were dropping like flies, and, the rest, folks know what happened. But
well, you've credited that race almost, or the first race, as kind of your big introduction and falling in love with gravel. But that also was kind of the powder keg for a whole new wave of people, retired World Tour pros, other people getting back in the sport.
Yeah.
It feels pretty good, right? Like we're in a good spot right now.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
and the graph is only going up.
I know it's crazy to look up sometimes and think about and see and feel how much energy is behind the sport right now. It's really great to see folks in my position, peers, and maybe folks who are just kind of becoming interested in doing it at a professional level to have actual opportunities.
Right.
That's really exciting. But beyond that, I'm so relieved that these events have maintained their kind of founding ethos, which was being for everyone,
right,
and being an on-ramp to competitive cycling or adventure cycling for folks of all backgrounds. And so even though there's these increasing professional opportunities for folks in my position, which is really exciting, we see just the bread and butter folks, the folks that are just out there for the experience, hoping to finish, that contingent is growing as well. So it's really incredible that, at least to this point, gravel is still maintaining that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to keep, diligence.
We got to hold on to that, right? Like we got to hold on to that as an anchor to the sport.
Yeah,
I mean, you're embracing that more than ever this week. You got your motorhome. You're going to park it right on Main Street, and you've told everybody, hey, there's going to be a cooler right out front. Come on by.
It's such a I got this idea late last year about. I mean, in cyclocross, you see a lot of the athletes have
Camping
RVs
out there for the week.
Exactly,
yeah.
and I started thinking, why not try this? It could be really cool. And my mechanic can be there. We have a whole bike shop set up in the back now. And then the other aspect was, what other than the actual race, what's the best thing to do about these events? It's hang out at the venue. People.
Yeah.
Share a beverage, whatever it is.
If anything goes wrong with it, Strickland can fix it, right? He's right there, toolbox ready to go.
It's true.
Yeah.
And so it just, it's just an idea. And so Bobby was kind enough to give us a huge area in the expo. So yeah, we're going to have a couple coolers out with drinks and some chairs, and
love it.
Hope that people will come by and hang out, and just trying to lean into the community aspect a little bit more. Granted, hopefully it'll be an awesome tool for racing fast too, just being at ground zero. But we'll see. It's an experiment.
You've got a bit of a new program this year, some new sponsors and equipment on board.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did that all come to be? Was that a fun process to put all that together? I can't imagine.
It depends on the day.
Yeah.
I will say that this whole process of building a program from the ground up again has given me a massive appreciation for the support of a team. So the Orange Seal Off-Road team that I have ridden with for the last handful of years did so much work and made life easy in so many ways. But I'm so excited to have this new program set up exactly how I want it also. So there are trade-offs, but there's also massive upside. And overall, so far it's been great. I mean, granted, we'll see 6 months in.
Yeah.
But it's been so awesome to have a dedicated mechanic, Matt traveled with me here, my new mechanic. Really stoked to have him.
It takes a village, right? Like there's so many pieces to putting this something like that
together. My fiance Nicole is able to travel with me.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, we'll even bring the dog some race weekends probably. So, and it's a big vehicle. So if my parents wanted to fly in, there's a bed for them now and then. So it's different. But it's a direction that I wanted to try, this whole privateer thing. And it's kind of funny because I first did the privateer thing, I think in 2014 when I was just starting this
privateer back in the day. Man.
Yeah, just started this professional thing. And so it's interesting to kind of go full circle. And so far, so good.
Nice. I want to talk about Iceland because it was just watching the video. It was such an amazing experience just to watch. I can't even fathom the concept of having to not only ride it and do it, but then also produce it and get everything together to come with it. You did the race first, right? You were there for the race first. And then at that point, did you already have this project of doing the kind of the coast to coast thing in mind?
Yeah. So my friend Chris Burkhardt reached out and mentioned that he'd been working on developing this route in this certain region of Iceland. And it's meant to be kind of a bike touring route in one of the most remote areas of Iceland. But he and Lael Wilcox, who was also on the trip, kind of in the back of their mind knew that it would make a really awesome race one day as well. So we kind of had two objectives. One was to bring awareness to this route. It's about a 700-mile route. We did it over a week. And so part one was kind of bringing awareness to it. And then part two was scouting about the viability of it actually being a race.
Okay.
And there's some awesome folks there in the West Fjords region who have really taken on the majority of the work to make it a race. And so that's actually one of the events I'm most excited about this year in late June. It's a 4-day, 650-mile, self-supported kind of GB Duro style race, about 150 miles a day. So yeah, that was phase A. And then I was sort of, when Chris came up or approached me with this idea and this trip, I was sort of waffling a little bit because it was right in the middle of my race season. And I had the Oz Trails Epic Rides race and Mountain Bike Marathon Nationals shortly thereafter. And I was like, it's a lot of travel. That's a massive week, like right before racing. Not sure I want to do it. And he said, well, there's some cool FKT opportunities in Iceland. Like you could double up on this trip. And when you're over there, explore some of these other options. And we started looking at maps and kind of developing ideas and realized that as the crow flies, the northern coast and the southern coast of Iceland are very doable as a single bike ride. They're about 250 miles north to south. The trick is that the interior of Iceland is absolute nothingness. Like it's sand, glaciers, and volcanoes.
Vast wasteland of
wasteland,
drainage and rivers and
no life, no animals. It's where they practiced the Apollo program for NASA practiced a lot of their lunar stuff there. Yeah, exactly. And the weather's so volatile. So long story short, we were looking at maps and like, okay, on paper this is super doable to do in a day, but the weather's insane. There's no refuel points whatsoever. Anyway, long story short, I got super intrigued, decided to go over there and kind of have a 2-phase trip, the West Fjords thing, and then the Iceland crossing. Weather got insane, and so we had to push up the crossing attempt to just 48 hours after the bike tour.
Okay.
So I rode it was like 48 hours in like 9 days or something. Like it was an obscene amount of riding. No, more than that. It would have been way more than that because the ride itself was 20 hours. Anyway, it was there were a lot of things that were not ideal, and it required me to kind of let go of what I know about FKT style rides and instead just do it for the experience. And there was no one had ever done it, so there was no record to break. And so I was just like, you know what? I want to try to do this in less than a day. Let's not worry about how fast we do it. Let's just survive, have the experience, see if it's possible.
Okay.
And it was the coolest bike thing I've ever done, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about in those moments out there when it's really tough and you're pushing through and every cell in your body is begging you to maybe just stop and take 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Like that. Like, are you singing songs to yourself?
Yes.
Or is there like what goes through your head in those really tough moments?
Yeah. So I actually, for the first time in a while, wrote a pretty long article about this for my sponsor Osprey Packs a couple weeks ago. And it was weird to go through that process of a long form piece because these days we get so used to Instagram and everything about making it bite-sized. So it was really nice to get back to long form. But basically the whole thing was about that mental side. And that's really why I've fallen in love with these really big challenge rides, whether it's like the riding all the trails in Bentonville thing we did, or riding across Iceland, where it takes your mind is almost as cool as where it takes you physically, maybe cooler even. And so, yeah, I mean, there were periods of time during the ride across Iceland where I really, really wanted to quit for sure. It was point to point.
Was it temperature related? Was it just fatigue?
Everything.
Was it? Okay. Yeah.
So I had about a 15-mile-an-hour headwind basically all day. The temperature fluctuated from about 31 degrees to 40 degrees. It rained probably 12 of the 20 hours. And the weather patterns kind of created by these glaciers are really interesting in that whenever you get close to a glacier, the temperature just plummets, and you usually get this really crazy wind that comes right off of it. And then there's all these glacial rivers that you had to ford that are, knee, thigh deep. And yeah, I mean, it was, and there's no real like landmarks in the traditional sense out there in the interior. There's no tree that you can be like, all right, visually, I can tell that I'm going this fast. It's just sand.
Yeah.
As far as the eye can see. And so, yeah, mentally, I mean, I sung to myself. And at one point when I really wanted to stop because I lost complete function of my hands, I basically, like out loud, just asked myself, why I was doing this.
What the hell am I doing out here?
And that through that process, I was able to remind myself of how fortunate I am to have this opportunity. This is a once in a lifetime thing, like potentially a life highlight.
Yeah.
And what a shame it would be to call it quits just because of discomfort. Like I wasn't truly in danger. I was just incredibly uncomfortable. And once you sort of get in touch with that, at least for me, it helps me kind of push through. And then once you push through that barrier, you feel unstoppable.
Right.
So I pushed through that barrier with 115 miles to go, and mentally something switched. And that 115 miles, I just felt like Superman, like just hauling ass for 115 miles, not a care in the world. And it was just like this extra level of athleticism that I've never experienced. And I'll never forget it.
With all the great race successes and these adventures in mind, do you have another one planned?
Oh, yeah.
What are we crossing next? Can we talk about it, or is it still super secret?
I won't. Well, I'll put it this way. I have a notebook that has many ideas in it. I have probably 5 or 6 crossings that I've actually either rudimentarily mapped out or written notes about. The one I want to tackle next is in Europe. Similarly, it's a bit of a coast-to-coast thing. It's a bigger bite.
Okay.
I'm going to go do some scouting this fall. I think it'll probably happen in 23. But it's big enough that it's going to take real planning. So
big crew of people and all kinds of logistics.
And just, logistics primarily, and really dialing in the route. So, yeah.
Good stuff. We can't wait to hear what that's going to be.
Yeah.
We're getting into March, which means we're almost through the NBA season.
Yeah. Hey, my guy. Thank you. This is what we should be talking about.
Things are starting to heat up a little bit. How do we feel the way things are shifting out? East and West, playoff considerations, play-in game.
All right.
Where do you want to go?
Oh, my God. So I was watching Potential, and then they just, do things like lose in overtime to the Rockets, who have won, 10 games. Anyway, it's been an interesting year. I'm really excited about the Harden-Embiid duo.
Yeah.
I think that'll be really fun to watch. I'm really excited to see who actually – it's almost like cycling in a way, because it's so – people watching are going to be like, what the fuck are they talking about? But it's so dynamic with the trade market. Like, teams are always changing.
Yes. Mid-season, we changed twice for some of these guys.
A lot of people get hurt. It's a really high-impact sport. And so basketball almost has peaks and valleys like cycling does in a way. And so it's always interesting to see who starts peaking in the playoffs and towards the end. And so I think Embiid and Harden are a little too Cinderella. I think it's going to be a team with depth. I still really believe in Milwaukee, the Bucks.
Yeah.
But I mean, Arizona is
the
Suns, Phoenix Suns
they've had their foot on the gas all year. It seems
and they have so much depth.
Is the well, maybe not so much hindsight yet, but is the Westbrook acquisition for the Lakers, has that turned out to be just completely
brutal? Yeah, that's tough.
On paper, did it look really good, or
I'm not really sure. So it's so interesting how LeBron runs so much of the league, and he's typically so good at, and I mean like the pulling the strings, like not actually running the league, but it's so interesting how he definitely is the one that pushed for that, and he got it so wrong, which is so unusual for him. So that's why I'm kind of fascinated by it. I feel for Westbrook I feel for him personally because you see how much he cares.
Right.
Like he wants to be successful so badly. You see it in the interviews. You see it in the way he plays.
He wants that ring.
He
so
gives
bad.
it. He gives 100% every single night. But there's something about his style that just doesn't lend itself to the way the game is played right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. When they get AD back, maybe they can pull it together. But
or is this the modern day version of the Gary Payton, Karl Malone triumvirate that the Lakers brought in?
Dude, I know, right?
Careers,
yeah. It's
I wanted so much for it to happen at the beginning of the season, but it just didn't seem like it ever got syncopated and
I agree.
Working together.
I agree, and it's also it's very interesting. I almost feel like culturally there's a changing of the guard right now in terms of generations.
Oh, for sure.
Like guys feel like LeBron is like they can take him.
Yeah,
like they can take
him
to the rack.
Try, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Every night,
guys like Ja, all these young players, I think feel like it's time for a new guard to come in. And so when you see a roster like the Lakers that's made up by all of these Hall of Famers, but they're all in their mid to late 30s, if you told someone 7 years ago that they were going to have Carmelo Anthony, AD, LeBron,
and be begging for the 9 seed.
Yeah, totally.
Begging to get in the playoff game.
But anyway, I don't know. It's
we can talk hoops all night. In fact, we might go over to your motorhome over the weekend and pull up a chair and do it.
Be happy to.
Brother, thank you for sitting down with us. Can't wait to see how it turns out for you on Saturday. And certainly we can't wait to see more of these wonderful adventures that you get to take us on. So
appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the coverage. I mean, it's so awesome to see you guys set up so professionally. And like I said, I could talk all night. Y'all are great.
Man. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Payson McElveen joining us on the Pre-Ride Show presented by FSA. Appreciate you looking in with live coverage all weekend long. So make sure to check us out, subscribe, look in on us, and we got more to come. Thanks for looking in. Good stuff, brother.
Nice. That was like a half hour.